Alright my broskis, today we're looking at 30 upcoming indie first-person shooters that all look wildly promising. Some I've played demos of, some I've only followed extremely closely, but every single one of these look like it could be something truly special. Now this video will feature no rankings, no hard claims, just vibes, impressions and a whole lot of gunfire. So what do you say we dive into them? Let's go. So let's kick things off with Klostyn, and yeah, this one instantly feels like it crawled straight out of the late 90s, in the best possible way. This is a sci-fi shooter that very clearly wears its inspirations on its sleeve, and if you know Gunman Chronicles, you already got the vibe. Klostyn honestly looks like a full-on spiritual successor to that whole era. Chunky weapons, confident level design, and that unmistakable old school but ambitious feel. Now from what I've seen and from the demo, you play as a lone protagonist dropped onto a very distant, very hostile planet where alien creatures and space pirates have decided that your existence is extremely inconvenient. The shooting feels tight, the environments are fun to explore, and there's this constant sense of momentum pushing you forward. It doesn't overcomplicate things, and that's kind of the magic here. The demo itself is a great first impression. It starts strong, ends strong, and never really lets the energy dip in between. Visually, it nails the retro-futuristic sci-fi look without feeling dated, which is honestly harder to pull off than it sounds. Next up is Tremen, and this thing looks absolutely ridiculous in a good way. This is a boomer shooter that blends super modern lighting and environments with unapologetically arcadey gunplay, and that contrast actually works way better than it has any freaking right to. At first glance, it almost looks Unreal Engine levels of realistic, you know, when it pushes the engine yada yada yada, but it still plays like something ripped straight out of the Quake era. The enemies, they look disturbingly real despite being full-on monstrosities. The environments are massive and oppressive, and everything just screams, run forward and shoot everything that moves. The combat looks fast, aggressive and gloriously over the top. Big weapons, chunky feedback, and that very classic arcade-style approach where the solution to every problem is simply more firepower. The overall vibe of this game feels like Serious Sam colliding headfirst with Quake in a brutalist concrete nightmare, and I mean that as a super compliment. Story-wise, humanity is enslaved by hordes of mutants, and you're fighting your way through a harsh industrial hellscape to take it back. Simple setup, strong execution. After that we got Inspektor, and let's just say if you look at this and think Boltgun 1.5, you're not alone, and honestly, that's perfectly fine. Inspektor, it does look savage, neon-soaked, pixel-heavy, brutal violence, and completely unashamed of it. You play as the Inspektor sent to crush a violent uprising on a dark industrial planet, and from what it seems, subtlety is not part of the job description. This is pure 90s style shooter action turned up to 11, blasting through rebels and machines with oversized weapons drenched in blood, sparks and glowing sci-fi chaos. The visual style absolutely pops, mixing retro pixels with modern effects in a way that feels aggressive rather than nostalgic. Everything about this game looks fast, loud and merciless. No normal dilemmas, no hesitation, just forward momentum and overwhelming firepower. It knows exactly what it wants to be, and it commits hard. Now let's slow things down just a little bit with Golgothica, a first-person survival horror dungeon crawler that looks deeply unsettling in all the right ways. You're dropped into a massive industrial asteroid mining colony orbiting Golgothica 5, and something has clearly gone very wrong. From what it looks like, this game leans heavily into atmosphere, isolation and tension rather than non-stop action. Visually, Golgothica strikes a perfect balance between retro and modern. The textures, they're gritty, the lighting, it is oppressive, and the whole aesthetic feels deliberately uncomfortable. It doesn't try to clean things up, it leans into the grime, and honestly, I wouldn't want it any other way. This also looks like a very labyrinthine experience. Tight corridors, confusing layout, and a strong sense that you're never quite safe. Combat appears slower and more deliberate, making every encounter feel dangerous instead of disposable. And coming right up, yeah, this is an absolute banger that is coming right up. This is a first-person beat 'em up with shooting layered on top. and it is completely unhinged in the best freaking possible way. You got fists, melee weapons, pistols, shotguns, basically anything that can ruin someone's day, and the game lets you use all of it. What really sells this one though is the combat feedback. The enemy reactions are some of the most satisfying I've seen in any game. The animations are slightly exaggerated and they're not cartoony in terms of visuals, but in motion, and every hit feels punchy, fast and incredibly responsive. The description sums it up perfectly. Roundhouse kicks, 6 shooters, rusty lead pipes. You become a walking vehicle of revenge, tearing through enemies in brutal breakneck combat. And that's exactly how it feels from the demo. It's stylish, aggressive and just insanely fun to watch and play. Now coming up next is Berserker's Domain, and this might actually be the most randomized game in existence. Yeah, it is a roguelite, but it's also a ridiculously fast, chaotic first-person shooter inspired by Quake, Doom, Ultra Kid and Blood. And it does not waste your time. No menus, no tutorials, no loading screens, you click and play, and you're shooting something in about 5 seconds. Every run is completely unpredictable as well. Gravity can change, weapon behavior can change, enemy proportions can change. You might get giant enemies, tiny enemies, or other extremely questionable modifiers that honestly feel illegal to describe. Now on top of that, you got progression systems that unlock new weapons and upgrades between runs, meaning no 2 session ever feels the same, even if the demo alone offers hours of dumb chaotic fun. It's a small, it's a fast, and it's absolutely unhinged, and that's kind of what makes it great. And finally, we got DEFECT, a cyberpunk squad-based immersive shooter set in a dystopian world ruled by an AI, known simply as the System, which already feels like a red flag. Now DEFECT offers a full single-player offline experience, but it also offers co-op play and even a wild 4v4v4v4 PvP mode with dynamic objectives and advanced tech. And honestly, it's refreshing to see a game offer all of these options right out of the gate. The developers, they clearly listened to what players wanted. Offline play, co-op flexibility, and choice, and that alone earns point in my book. On top of that, the game just looks brutal. The cyberpunk aesthetic here is decaying, dirty, and almost apocalyptic, rather than shiny and clean. The weapons, they do look powerful, the environments feel oppressive, and the tone is dark without feeling edgy for the sake of it. This is one I'm especially excited to dive into solo, but knowing that co-op is there makes it even better. Now coming right up is Boltgun 2, and honestly, this one doesn't try to reinvent anything. It just gives you more guns, more enemies, more levels, more violence, more pixels, more everything that made the first game such a hit. From what has been shown so far, Boltgun 2 looks like a direct evolution rather than a radical shift. The biggest change is that we now get 2 playable characters, which already opens the door for different playstyles and replay value. Now on top of that, we're getting new weapons, new monsters, expanded environments, and just a bigger, meaner version of the original experience. Visually, it still leans hard into that crunchy, retro-heavy aesthetic, and the combat seems just as fast, brutal, and unapologetic as before. It knows exactly what it is, and it doesn't waste time pretending to be anything else. And that's what I really like about it. Broski, are you enjoying this video so far? Remember to hit that like, and if you want more videos just like this, smidge a little bit on that subscribe as well. It would mean a lot to me. Right after that, we got Wanted 3D Dead or Alive, which is built on a fork of the original Doom engine, and somehow manages to turn that into a full-blown Wild West power fantasy, and I love it. This is exactly the kind of cowboy first-person shooter we don't get enough of. Revolvers, dusty towns, outlaw vibes, all wrapped up in classic Doom-style movement and gunplay. The first demo that dropped showed a ton of potential, even if it clearly needed some extra polish. The exciting part though is how much better this game keeps looking with each and every update. Following its development, it's very obvious that things are tightening up. Animations, feedback, pacing, all steadily improving all the time. And that makes the full release feel genuinely promising. Now, yes, expectations are probably getting a little too high here, and that's usually dangerous, but I can't help it. I want more cowboy shooters, and this one seems determined to deliver exactly that. And next up is Sportal, a roguelite arena first-person shooter set in a twisted version of 1950s America. And this one is just straight up weird in the best way. Instead of traditional weapons, you're tearing through arenas using sports equipment. hockey pucks, tennis rackets, and all kinds of ridiculous gear. But here's the catch, each piece of equipment has multiple variants that completely change how it plays. A hockey puck might act as a grenade launcher in one run, then suddenly turn into a sniper-style weapon in another. Because of that, every run forces you to adapt and rethink how you approach combat, which keeps things feeling fresh. Now the roguelite upgrades, they also go surprisingly deep. Even though many of them are run-specific, they dramatically change your damage output, movement, and overall strategy. Sportal, it just feels chaotic, creative, and constantly fun. One of those games that doesn't take itself too seriously, but still has a lot going on under the hood. And next up is Derelikt, which is a slower-paced, narrative-driven survival horror first-person shooter that leans heavily into PlayStation 1 era aesthetics. And yeah, that's a huge plus here. This is one of those games where the low-fidelity visuals actually make everything scarier. The chunky models, limited lighting, and retro presentation all work together to create a constant sense of unease. From what it seems, you'll be meeting over a dozen unique NPCs, managing inventory, solving puzzles, and fighting off eldritch abominations, with a strong emphasis on atmosphere and storytelling. There also appears to be a solid dose of immersive sim elements baked in, which gives you more freedom in how you approach situations. It's not about non-stop shooting, it's about tension, decision making, and feeling vulnerable. And honestly, that slower pace makes every encounter hit harder. A lot of people are already hyped for this one, and based on what's shown, it's easy to see why. Right after that, we have Project Warlock: The Lost Chapters, which feels like both a step forward and a step back, in a good way that is. If you know the Project Warlock series, this one seems to lean closer to the feel of the first game, rather than the second, while still expanding the formula. The combat looks faster, the jibs are completely over the top, and the feedback is just excessive in all the right ways. You'll be traveling through 3 distinct worlds: jungle rot, space horror, and pirate nightmares, each with their own weapons, enemies, and levels to clear. That variety alone makes it feel more ambitious than it might initially look. The demo showed some rough edges at first, but it's already been updated, and improvements, they are noticeable. If the full release keeps that momentum, this should fit right in alongside the previous entries without any form of issues. And next up is The Age of Hell, a GZ Doom-powered shooter that fully commits to its premise: pick up the hammer and erase hell from existence. From the demo alone, this game looks packed. You got massive slaughter map arenas, tight claustrophobic corridors, bosses, secrets that are sometimes bigger than the levels themselves, and a hammer that has multiple mechanics layered into it. Every weapon features alternate fire modes, combat looks fast but deliberate, and the level design feels incredibly varied. One moment you're barely holding the line, next you're wiping out entire legions of the damned. Now if this game actually drops in 2026 is still a bit of a mystery, since the developer has been very quiet and hasn't really talked about the game much at all. But if it drops in 2026, it could easily end up being one of the strongest boomer shooters of the year. And finally, we got Paperhead, which might be one of the most unique takes on the horror boomer shooter hybrid that I have ever seen. This is a world made entirely of cardboard, cute, colorful cardboard, and something has gone very, very wrong here. You fight using a mix of traditional weapons like shotguns alongside a magic pencil, your boots, and a whole lot of movement. The game, it is fast, you're double jumping, flying through levels, kicking bombs, and absolutely demolishing enemies. And here's the thing, these paper enemies, they bleed a lot, with extremely satisfying audio and visual feedback that makes every kill feel absurdly good. And despite all that speed and chaos, there's also a slow burn narrative horror element underneath it all, which creates a really interesting contrast. It's playful, violent, unsettling, and genuinely fun to play. And then we have Shell Soldier, which feels a bit like Fear meets Boomer Shooter, but also very much its own thing. This is a fast-paced, semi-tactical shooter where survival depends on movement, positioning, and smart use of slow motion and other gadgets. You're constantly juggling grenades, mines, and other tools while trying to stay one step ahead of enemies that absolutely do not forgive your mistakes. What really sells this one though is how good it looks in motion. The slow motion effects paired with debris, light, environmental destruction, and enemy reactions make combat feel incredibly satisfying. Every explosion, every takedown, it has weight to it. There is also a layer of horror sitting just beneath the surface. It's not full survival horror, but there's definitely tension and unease baked into the experience, which help keep things from feeling just like another arena shooter. There's even some light puzzling mixed in, which helps break up the pacing. Overall, it really feels like the developer knows exactly what kind of experience they're trying to build here. If this sticks the landing, Shell Soldier could end up being one of the most satisfying combat-focused shooters of the year. And right after that, we got Far Far West. Yet another cowboy shooter, and I freaking love it. But this one goes in a very different direction. Instead of realism, Far Far West leans hard into the dark fantasy. Think strange worlds, weird magic, monstrous enemies, and a wild Wild West setting that feels more cursed than historical. And on top of that, it's a co-op shooter supporting up to 4 players. You and your crew journey through the Far Far West, completing missions, collecting bounties, slinging spells, blasting monsters, and trying to get in, get paid, and get out. Preferably live. The gunplay looks especially solid. Weapons, they feel punchy and well animated, and enemy reactions seem satisfying across the board. The only slightly odd thing is that you don't see any arms, just floating hands, which can feel a bit strange at first, but from the looks of it, there is an in-universe explanation for that, possibly involving some kind of armored or energy-based character that we actually play. But once you get past that, the visuals, they are genuinely pleasing, and the overall vibe feels cohesive. This one looks chaotic, stylish, and very co-op friendly. And right after that, we got Deadboot, which can best be described as cruel meets sci-fi, but with some important twists. Yeah, the core DNA, it feels similar, but Deadboot does a lot of things differently. For starters, in the current playtest, there is no timer, which completely changes how you approach levels. You can slow things down, think through encounters, and choose when to strike. The levels themselves, they're larger, with more room to move, and enemy behavior feels more dynamic. That said, the stakes are still sky high. Headshots matter, speed matter. If you mess up, you will die, and you'll die fast. What is especially impressive is how polished this already feels for a playtest. Movement, shooting, and enemy feedback all feel tight, which makes it easy to imagine how good this could be with a bit more refinement. Deadboot has serious potential to become something special, especially for players who want high-skill combat without being forced into non-stop speedrunning. And right after that, we have KVLT, or Cult. And this one goes hard on atmosphere and ambition. You're fighting through armies of Nazi occultists, religious zealots, and unspeakable cosmic horror in a grimdark early 2000s-inspired shooter where World War II collides with Lovecraftian nightmare fuel. This game has had a demo out for quite a while, and it's been steadily updated over time. It's also one that's been building anticipation for years now, and you can really feel the passion behind it all. Yes, it's clearly an indie project, and that shows in places, but that's part of the charm. The level design, weapons, puzzles, platforming, and combat all feel handcrafted and really ambitious. It's trying to do a lot, and most of it seems to actually work. If everything comes together the way it looks like it might, KVLT could end up being a genuinely memorable and very distinctive shooter when it drops in 2026. After that, we got Neo Berlin, which is a bit of a curveball. This is a hybrid first and third person action RPG with a heavy focus on narrative set in a dark futuristic version of Berlin. It leans hard into cinematic storytelling, detective work, and emotional themes like justice, friendship, love, guilt, sacrifice, and betrayal. Visually, it does look fantastic. Moody lighting, detailed environments, and a strong cyberpunk atmosphere. It's also an indie game, self-published by Elysium Games Studio, which makes the scope especially impressive. But, of course, they could have investors yada 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 that are not shown, I don't know. That said, this is one of those projects where ambition is both exciting and a little scary. The scope is big on this one, and there's always that concern of trying to do too much. But if it manages to pull it off, Neo Berlin could be something genuinely special, blending investigation, narrative depth, and action in a way we don't see very often. This one's a cautious but hopeful wait and see. And finally, we got the Meat Engine, easily the goriest and most fleshy boomer shooter of the bunch. This is a sci-fi shooter inspired by Scorn, Quake, Dusk, and Doom, set in a dark, war-torn future overflowing with body horror. The environments look like they were pulled straight out of an H.R. Geiger fever dream. All flesh, bone, and biomechanical nightmare fuel. Enemies, they don't just die, they splat. Everything looks wet and is wet. It's visceral and disturbingly alive. And despite all that, the combat still feels fast, responsive, and very much rooted in classic boomer shooter pacing. The demo, it has been updated constantly, and there's even an active playtest running right now. And with a little bit more polish compared to the demo experience, this could turn into a truly standout shooter. Not just because of the gore, but because of how distinct its aesthetic and enemy design feel. Unique weapons, unique visuals, and classic first-person shooter energy. Meat Engine looks like it's aiming to leave a mark. Now coming right up is Better Than Dead, and my broskis, yeah, this one surprised me. This is a bodycam first-person shooter, which is not usually something I get overly hyped about, but I actually had the chance to play this one early, and it's genuinely unique and genuinely good. This game is set in a photorealistic version of Hong Kong, and you play as a woman whose life is violently torn apart. Her captors, they break in, film her, destroy everything, and now she's done running. This time, she's the one filming. Better Than Dead is a brutal, linear first-person shooter built around tight, action-packed levels. Every mission feels like a raid. Every fight feels personal. You got a pistol, a body cam, and a kill list. And the game doesn't waste time pretending this is anything other than a revenge story. It's fast, focused, and surprisingly intense. With short levels, high tension, and zero filler, honestly, it's way better than I expected. And one I think a lot of people are going to sleep on if they're not careful. And finally we have a release year for Luna Abyss, and that year is 2026. This is one of those games I've been excited for what feels like forever. Luna Abyss is a single-player story-driven action-adventure with fluid platforming and bullet-hell combat, which is already a combination we don't see very often. You follow the journey of Fox, a prisoner of Luna caught between a cryptic prophecy and their sentence. What immediately stands out is the aesthetic. It's absolutely stunning, but it goes way beyond just visuals. The sound design is incredible, the audio effects are wild, and the storytelling feels deliberate and mysterious without being vague for the sake of it. The characters, they are interesting. The world, it feels oppressive but beautiful. And the bullet hell combat adds a layer of intensity that really sets it apart. There are also smaller mechanics like a lock-on system, which you can turn off if you want to, but it also makes the game very accessible. And through, I just genuinely loved my time with the demo, and I cannot wait to experience the full game. And coming up next is HMUR. And yeah, I'm still not 100% sure how you actually pronounce that, but this is another one I had the chance to play early. At its core, HMUR is a fast-paced retro first-person shooter chaos kind of game. It technically shares some DNA with Cruel, but it's doing its own thing entirely. The setting merges Soviet aesthetics with absurd, wacky madness wrapped in frantic 90s shooter energy. You're fighting through a disaster in a classified Soviet facility, blasting through crowds of enemies at insane speeds. Reaction time, it is everything here. Movement, it is survival. You're constantly looking for the fastest, most efficient way to wipe everything off the map. But what really makes HMUR stand out though, is the comedy layered on top of it all. It doesn't take itself too seriously, and that tone fits the game perfectly. It's aggressive, ridiculous, and weirdly charming, and honestly, that's why it just works so bloody well. Now, let's talk about a beloved boomer shooter getting a sequel. I'm of course talking about Zortch 2. There is a demo out already, and yeah, I've covered it, but in short, this is exactly what you want a sequel to be. It is Zortch 1, but bigger, badder, and way more confident. The game keeps that strong 90s aesthetic, introduces more unique weapons, more chaotic environments, and enemies that are just ridiculously fun to explode. Everything feels dialed up without losing the personality of the original game. Story-wise, after escaping the planet of the brain-suckers, our heroine immediately crash lands on a desert planet, because of course she does. And once again finds herself stuck in the middle of a conflict between a human colony, wasp-like natives, and a bizarre cybernetic cult that worships might. And once again, the only solution is violence. Beautiful, explosive violence. And next up is a very cool broski-made game called Neon Rain, and this one is immediately different. You're dropped onto Vakrex, a living hostile alien world plagued by conflict and cosmic phenomena known as Neon Rain. You don't call the shots here. You either evolve or you die. This is a fusion of boomer shooter combat and Metroidvania structure set entirely on an alien planet with no humans anywhere in sight. And I mean, Neon Rain? Yeah, this game sticks out, trust me. Now the aesthetics is striking. From the moment you boot it up, everything feels deliberate, cohesive and thoughtfully designed. Yes, to some it might actually not look great, but to others, like me, yeah, I like it. I like it. Now exploration actually matters here as well, and the world itself feels like the main character. Neon Rain feels ambitious, creative and genuinely fresh, which is not easy to pull off in this genre, trust me. Now next up is CTRLSINK, which is a submerged post-apocalyptic retro-style first-person shooter set in a world swallowed by the ocean after a human-AI war. You'll be blasting through flooded facilities, fighting corrupted machines, exploring radioactive ruins, and uncovering the last secrets of humanity's collapse. Deep beneath the Antarctic ice lies Sabi, an analog submarine fortress buried far below deadly radiation zones. What really sets CTRLSINK apart is its visual identity. It almost feels stop motion at times, retro, tactile, and strangely beautiful, while still using modern effects to enhance the atmosphere. Now I haven't played the demo yet, so I can't speak on how it feels moment to moment, but visually and conceptually, this one looks good. And right after that we got Road to Motherflipping Vostok, and honestly, what can you even say about this one? This is one of the most ambitious solo developed games out there. It's a hardcore tactical first-person shooter with survival elements, set in a post-apocalyptic border zone between Finland and Russia. You loot, plan, prepare, and attempt to cross into Vostok, which is a permadeath zone where one mistake can end everything. No hand-holding, no forgiveness. And from everything shown so far, this looks incredibly deep, brutally realistic, and insanely well thought out. It's one of those projects where the passion and dedication are impossible to ignore. And after that we got Mouse P.I., the black and white boomer shooter with unmistakable rubber house cartoon aesthetics. You play as a private investigator, Jack Pepper, in a guns-blazing, jazz-fueled adventure that somehow combines 1930s cartoon animation with explosive first-person shooter action. And it freaking works. The animation style doesn't just look like classic cartoons, it moves like them, and underneath that charming exterior is a surprisingly solid shooter that feels fast, responsive and fun, or at least it looks like it feels that. Now at this point, most people watching my channel probably knows about this game already, and for good reason. Mouse P.I. looks like pure joy wrapped in chaos. And now, my beloved broskis, we got RetroSpace. And yeah, this is my most anticipated immersive sim of 2026. No contest. This is immersive sim energy turned up to absurd levels. You can play sneaky, go full mutant action hero, or do something completely unhinged as you try to survive on a space station being swallowed by a goddamn black hole. The setting is disco punk space horror. The features include time jumps, weird creatures, immersive systems, and 1970s mustaches. Now, that alone is enough to sell me. RetroSpace looks phenomenally good, deeply interactive, and wildly creative. And last but not least, my broskis, we have ExeKiller. This is a retro-futuristic western set in a post-apocalyptic alternate timeline. Essentially, cyberpunk meets the Wild West. It's a first-person action-adventure shooter with character progression and meaningful story choices. And that combination alone is already a strong contender for a great game, but everything shown so far suggests this one leans heavily into atmosphere, world building, and player agency. Cyberpunk westerns, they don't come around very often, and when they do, they deserve the attention. And hopefully it turns out amazing. Thank you so much for watching all the way to the end. You are bloody freaking awesome. So thank you. And while I got you on the hook, remember to join the Discord, link down in the description. There is a ton more where this came from, and all of that is shared in there. Plus, there are some pretty awesome people in there as well. Now again, thank you for watching all the way to the end. I shall see you in the next one. Over and out.